All right. Happy Thursday, everyone. Thank you for joining our Azure Infrastructure and Management Partner Community Call for January. We have a phenomenal speaker in Karl here today for us to help us out for the next hour or so. But before we get going, we just want to do a quick sound check. So if you guys can hear me, please type into, is repeating everything Karl's saying. I'm getting questions. We can hear you. I don't even need to ask a question. I was going to say Star Trek or Star Wars, and if you feel like answering that question, feel free to continue. But wonderful. Maybe that'll help start your morning. So other than that, as those answers come ringing in, just want to give a few logistical pieces of information beforehand. So as you guys may or may not know, this call is going to be recorded, and by asking questions, there is a chance that your name and or email does pop up in the call. So if that is something that you are not okay with, feel free to log off and disconnect now. We will be posting the slides if we haven't already, and we'll be posting the recording of this call to our YouTube page in a day or two as well. So be on the lookout for that if there's anything you miss or want to recap as well. But without further ado, Karl, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Parker. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening if we have anyone from across the pond who has joined. You never know. At times we get a pretty varied and multinational audience here. So first of all, boy, I just have to go back a little bit in time and just say, can't we all just get along? Does it have to be Star Wars or Star Trek? You know, I think we can come together. We can unify under one sci-fi umbrella. I love them both. Can't really pick a favorite, but hopefully we can just start out with that little message of unification here as we get going. So my condolences, because for some of you, this is the fourth day that you've had to hear my really bad jokes, and I sincerely apologize for that, because this is the fourth straight day that we have had a session focused on storage, typically a boring topic, but we've brought some really interesting solutions, I think, in front of you this week, and we're going to continue to do that throughout the month. So look for those sessions. I'll share the blog where we announced the whole Azure storage series a little bit later on here in the session. I'm going to do some screen sharing and show folks a few things. And really today's session, what differentiates this from the prior sessions this week and the following sessions this month is we're going to be focusing on use cases, business needs, more of that level of discussion with, of course, some technology mixed in as you're all used to from me. Whereas the sessions earlier this week and throughout the remainder of the month, we're shining the spotlight on our technology partners. So there is no Azure discussion in those conversations outside of all of those technology partners leverage Azure storage in some really creative and useful ways. So today, a very different topic. I hope you enjoy it. And again, if this is your fourth day in a row of hearing from me, I can't apologize more. But I think I've got some good stuff for you. So I know those of you who have joined me in prior months have heard me talk about my past, my past as a sysadmin, storage architect. And what I'm showing you here was developed by our storage product team to capture some of the challenges and how cloud storage can help address those challenges within your customer base. And I can tell you that they're spot on. We have a great group out there in our storage product team who really listens and who's comprised of industry veterans, just like I am. I've been in this aspect of the IT industry for a long time, and they're spot on. I lived through these challenges, and I certainly saw them in my customer base when I worked for a storage technology company and also here at Microsoft. And this is what it comes down to. When you look at these challenges in current modern storage infrastructures, they're very real. Storage environments today can get big, really big. I mean, you're talking multiple petabytes in individual storage systems. The pools and access to those pools can be big and can be shared across multiple hypervisor infrastructures and physical server infrastructures, and it gives you a big pool to pull from. But there's always a price to pay, and there's always limits in each one of those factors. So from a scalability perspective, individual arrays have gotten a lot bigger, and you can chain multiple storage arrays together, but you're going to run into a limit somewhere. And typically that limit is when you have reached the performance capacity for that array, which is very different than the physical storage capacity. What do I mean by performance capacity? Well, you look at modern storage arrays, and they're all built on x86 architectures. So they have the same Intel processors that we run in high-end servers, right? They have the same memory footprints. They all have RAM that they use for caching and for system operations. And what happens with modern storage arrays is you run out of performance potential before you run out of capacity. So it means you have to add net new controllers. So you always have to add disks to go along with that. And you find these artificial limits before you often thought you would. So it creates challenges when you need to provision storage for new projects. And it causes delays because those acquisitions of equipment need to go through the purchasing organization, right? There's always a delay there. From a fragmentation standpoint, between protocols and switching and arrays supporting specific operating systems, you run into issues with maybe having available capacity in one location but not another. And then high costs, well, that speaks for itself. Enterprise storage infrastructures do provide tremendous value. They have very rich feature sets, but there's a lot that adds to the total cost beyond the cost on paper for the hardware itself, and that's what we're going to talk about. And all of these lead to project delays. They lead to the type of things that you see customers moving to public cloud for. No delay in acquiring equipment, rapid provisioning, near limitless scalability, all things that drive folks to the cloud. So, that's really it. I mean, it truly nearly limitless, right? And not in a particular object or a particular service perspective. I mean, we have limits too, right? We have disk size limits for virtual machines. We have storage account limits, but you can very, very quickly create another and attach it to that project. Keep that service going. Keep everything up and running and moving very quickly, because those resources are there waiting for you in a hyperscale environment. Management is drastically simplified. The amount of time that it would take to provision 500 terabytes of storage in a traditional infrastructure versus what we can do in Azure is just drastically different. There's a huge delta between those two. And the great thing about provisioning something like 500 terabytes worth of storage capacity is you are only paying for what you use. And this is not something new in the world of storage. Storage has had a concept of thin provisioning for a while, where I have just-in-time access to resources. But the problem is, very, very rarely are any customers able to leverage that for true financial benefit. Because while they're using thin provisioning technologies to only consume the amount of storage that's actually needed, they still have that raw capacity on the floor that they've paid for. So they've made an investment that's effectively wasted until it's consumed. And that's not the case. It's never the case with cloud storage. Not only are we providing capacity just in time, but that customer is truly only paying for what they use. And that is a drastic difference between all on-premise storage and cloud storage. So all of this means that your customers are able to focus on the business needs. They don't have to worry about having enough excess capacity available, having enough performance potential available without having too much, right? Where they've wasted the company's money having assets on the floor that are underutilized. So these are some of the business challenges that cloud storage can help address. And I mentioned that there was a cost factor that needed to be discussed here, and really it's what customers perceive their storage cost to be versus what it really is. And there are several things that lead to a much higher cost for on-premise storage than cloud storage. And it starts with the one that most customers are aware of, and that is the actual hardware cost itself. So what did it cost me to buy this amount of capacity? Here it is. I've got my quote in front of me from my storage vendor. I can go out there, I can look at the hard drives and the controllers and all the pieces and parts, and this is the sum total of what I paid. And when customers talk to us as vendors, as trusted advisors, and say, this is what I'm paying, that's often the number they're giving you. So you've got to pull a little bit more out of them to really reflect the true economic benefit of cloud storage, like what are the software and support costs that go along with that storage infrastructure? Every time I add capacity or every time I buy a net new storage array, I need to pay for the software that allows me to manage it and leverage really cool technologies like snapshots and clones to protect my data and present copies of it. That stuff doesn't come free. Those are billable items, and every time you add, typically you have to add software to go along with it because those are capacity tier-based licenses. And then support. Support for enterprise storage systems is really, really expensive. And it needs to be, because that's a critical piece of infrastructure. And I need to know that when something goes wrong, I can pick up the phone and I can have somebody on site in an hour or less and get things back and operational. So support is expensive, but that support is justified, right? That's got to be factored into the overall cost. And then there's usable capacity. So when we bill customers for 5 terabytes of storage used in Azure, it's truly the 5 terabytes used. So there's no RAID that's taken out where that 5 terabytes is really 6.2 or 10 terabytes or whatever the case may be due to redundancy. They are truly paying for what they are truly using. We build in the cost of the data protection, the number of copies, the redundancy. With enterprise storage vendors, the quotes that they're often given are for X amount of terabytes, but it doesn't reflect usable terabytes. So now you've got to do the math to figure out what the impact of RAID or the protection scheme on that array is, and that means more money for that same gigabyte of storage. And then there's the utilization. I mentioned the performance limits, right? So oftentimes I would find in my infrastructure that I would have terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of stranded capacity. It was available, it was free, but I didn't have enough performance potential in the array to access it and use it. So are you really getting all of those usable gigabytes and terabytes that you've paid for? And what we've found through industry independent research is that array that the customer thinks costs them 40 cents per gigabyte really ends up costing them quite a bit more. Actually, 0.4 cents. Sorry, less than a cent per gig. It actually ends up costing them quite a bit more. Whereas with cloud storage, the price you see is the price it is without having to do any calculus to get down to what that true cost is. And we even include the data center infrastructure cost, the power and cooling. Boy, how many customers know what it costs them to power and cool their data center and attribute that to the infrastructure cost as well. And it's a real big onion to start to peel back, right? And if you just make them aware of it, they can start to see the value that cloud-based storage truly provides to them. So I'm going to pause there real quick before we go into these use cases and ask if we have any questions so far. We looking good, Parker and Willie?
Hey, Karl, we do have one question that came in. The question is it possible to back up database files like Access into the cloud? And or is it possible to run/use Access databases from the cloud?
Okay, great questions. So I think the answer to both of those is yes. And we're going to talk about the backup here in just a second. So I will address that one directly, and we'll show you how that would work. Running Access databases from the cloud, absolutely. And I would say there's a couple of ways to accomplish that. The way I personally would feel safe about doing that would be in a remote desktop type scenario where I had remote desktop services running in the cloud, so the Access databases were local to the actual compute that was taking place. I don't know how many of you have experience with Access, but Access is typically not a network-friendly database platform because it's really meant to be a personal database platform, right? Where you're running Access on your laptop, on your desktop, and doing your work. So if you're going to do something like that, you'd like to leverage the cloud, put the database in the cloud, keep the access of and use of that database in the cloud, and stream the presentation layer, right? That's just my personal recommendation there. Anybody else, Nick or Willie, you guys have thoughts on that? Feel free to share as well, but based on past experience and headaches, that's what I would recommend. All right, great question so far. Appreciate it. I love active audiences. This is good stuff. So backup is one of those use cases that I'm going to highlight. We're going to spend a lot of time on backup because it is one of the greatest ways to leverage cloud storage. But we're going to start with archive, and notice my note there about Office 365. So Office 365 applications, particularly Exchange Online, have some great native archiving built in. So I do not need to use Azure Storage for archiving O365 apps. You've got other means to do that, right? What I'm talking about here with archive is on-premise applications where I want to reduce the data footprint. And reducing the data footprint without deleting data has a lot of benefits, right? One, you may need that data down the road. Maybe the legal eagles come and they want to go back in time so they can pursue a case, right? Well, you've got to make sure you can go back years. But if you can move those old records that only need to be accessed in a scenario like that to less expensive storage, move it off of your expensive primary storage and into the cloud, there's a lot of cost savings there. You also know from an accountability perspective, it's safe in the cloud. We have multiple copies of it that we're protecting for you. And it also means a side benefit, that's data that you no longer need to back up. It's already offsite. There are already multiple copies of it. So you're going to shrink and simplify your backup jobs. You've got less to back up, which is a wonderful thing. And there are some great vendors that we partner with that have excellent solutions to help you reduce the size of production data sets like SharePoint content repositories, file shares, on-premise Exchange environments, database infrastructures. There are great database archival tools listed over there under solutions, and SAP, great SAP archival solutions as well. And you're going to hear during this series from Commvault and OpenText, who have some great solutions to bring to market in this archive arena. And then next month, we're actually going to continue this Azure Storage focus next month with additional webcasts from vendors, and we will be hearing from Archive 360 during that time. They have a really innovative Azure-based archive solution that I just found out about last week that blew my mind. So these vendors have great things to share with you. Please join us for the Azure Storage Solution Series. And again, I'll bring up that web page with the schedule here going forward. But this is a hot topic. This is something your customers could really benefit from, and you've got some great solutions to bring to them. And backup to our question from the audience, to me, is just an absolute no-brainer. Everybody needs to send their backups off-site. That is an absolute requirement for every business, every customer you work with. And they have many means that they're doing that with today, and we're going to talk about that in the next set of slides. but we have some great options with our partners listed over there on the right under solutions that will plug right into what that customer is doing today. So if they are already using Commvault, Veeam, Veritas, and they want to add cloud vaulting of their backups, offsite vaulting, with each one of those, it's as simple as adding a license key, and they're enabled. They can now add an Azure storage account as a pool, as a storage pool for their backup software, and begin vaulting backups off to the cloud. So they meet the offsite requirement, they get rid of the horrible complexity and unreliability of tape, or they eliminate very expensive purpose-built backup appliances. So a great way to do it with what they already have. If they're using a software solution that does not have a cloud connector yet, they can look at awesome products from CloudLanes and NetApp AltaVault in particular. Those are appliances that not only have cloud connectors, but can also optimize that data being sent to the cloud by deduplicating it, compressing it, and encrypting it in the hardware. So fantastic options to get backups offsite into the cloud, and they have a really cool thing that they can bring to bear as well that I'm going to talk about in a second. And then the final category really breaks into two. So you'll hear us talk about hybrid cloud, right? You hear many people talk about hybrid cloud. And really what that is extending your on-premise data center into the cloud. So you can provision in both locations. You have them connected from a network perspective. You've got a bigger data center that includes one or multiple Azure regions, Azure data centers. And I've got two ways that I can get data there in a hybrid cloud type of scenario. One is storage tiering. That is what our StoreSimple appliance does. So some of the data stays on-premise on the StoreSimple appliance. The less recently accessed data goes off to Azure, and all the backups of the data that are stored on StoreSimple, it will back up it. Well, all of the data stored on StoreSimple, it will back up itself, and it will send that off to Azure, so it's protected. It does combined backup and primary storage. There are other solutions in market that do the same thing, like our friends at Nasuni. Talon Software offers a great way to extend data into the cloud. SoftNAS has a great in-cloud software-defined storage solution and then an on-premise solution that can replicate to it. Many ways to extend on-premise storage footprint to the cloud. And then the other option in this space is constant synchronization. That is what our own site recovery solution does. That is what you see from Velostrada, from Zerto. There are some really good solutions that are constantly updating a copy, a replica of the data on-premise in the cloud. And all of these solutions can do some really cool things, whether it's an archive backup or a hybrid cloud infrastructure solution. All of them can do really good things and really cool things, beneficial things for your customer in terms of making that data available to Azure services. So Azure becomes more than just a vault. Azure becomes more than just a digital filing cabinet. It can now be a dev test environment. It can now be an analytics environment. It can now be a way for them to leverage the on-demand services that Azure brings to bear with their own data in a very seamless, very easy workflow, all by virtue of the solutions that you see listed here. So I'm going to pause for questions in just a minute. I'm going to go through 3 more slides here and kind of walk through these scenarios with you. Then I'll go ahead and see what questions have been asked, and we'll move into the final part of the presentation, and we should have some good time for Q&A as well at the end. But back up, we've all got things that we need to protect. Applications, machines, Windows, Linux infrastructure, you name it, we've got to back it up, right? So The way everybody does that today is they have some backup software package. Many customers have multiple. They've chosen Veeam to back up their VMware infrastructure, and they're using something like Veritas Net Backup for aspects of their Linux, Unix environment. Net, they've got one or multiple backup software solutions. They are all backing that up locally. So they have to have a disk target, typically, nowadays, to get the backups done in time. Windows are shrinking, data sets are increasing. I need fast disk to capture those backups to make sure that they're done before people come into work the next day, right? And then they all have an offsite requirement. So they're either sending it to tape, shipping those tapes off to Iron Mountain or some other repository, or maybe they have another one of those disk arrays, backup appliances at an alternate site, and they're sending the backups over to that. But they got to protect it, and they got to make sure that that protection is secure through encryption and secure transport. So what happens if they want to start backing up to the cloud? They want to get rid of tape. They want to get rid of that second site and second disk array. What can they do? Well, the easiest thing that we talked about with Commvault and Veritas and Veeam is adding the Cloud Connector license. And they all call it something different. I'm using that term generically. But I add that license, or if my software doesn't support it, I add something like NetApp AltaVault or Cloud Lanes that can allow me to replace that on-premise disk target with one that is cloud capable, right? Cloud connected. Then from there, I need a storage account in Azure. For a backup use case, this really should be Azure Cool Storage, economical. Make it economical for that customer. And what I can do is I can slowly start replacing the old solution with the new, right? Rip and replace, calling back all of those old backups and writing them up to the cloud can be painful. You know, we saw this in a prior life of mine, a company I worked for. Trying to replace an old tape infrastructure with a new was an absolute nightmare. I mean, it would have taken us weeks and weeks and weeks and dedicated people to recall everything and write it out to the new tape. Instead, we kept one small portion of the tape library around until those backups expired. So we started to see that old legacy backup footprint shrink. And when it got to the point where everything had life cycled out, we got rid of it. That's the best thing a customer can do, if they can afford to do that. It's in their best interest from a time and money and sanity perspective. But once I have this cloud backup in place in any way, shape, or form, so I've got my most recent backups up there, right? I've got some data in the cloud. Now I can start doing some cool things. The vendors that I mentioned, whether they're the software-based solutions or the hardware-based solutions, they have marketplace appliances in Azure. So by bringing one of their marketplace appliances online, I can now access those backups. I can now present those backups. I can present that data to VMs or, depending on the format they store them in, media services, machine learning, HD Insight through blob storage. All of a sudden, I have the ability to leverage the data that was exclusively on-premise in the cloud. And I've done it as the customer using tools I already know, tools I'm familiar with. And that's really cool. Spin up and spin machines down to do dev test on demand, run analytics. Instead of building a huge analytics farm on-premise, using my own data, I can use on-demand analytics in the cloud. Really, really cool. And it all starts with getting the data to Azure. And that's what each one of these solutions does, right? Each one of these solutions allows me to send my data to the cloud. And if I'm already using this vendor's tools, it's an interface I already know. And if not, if it's introducing a net new solution like Cloud Lanes or NetApp AltaVault, they're pretty darn easy to cloud connect, and their workflows for presenting backups to Azure resources are pretty darn simple. We saw that yesterday on our call with Actifio, who has a really, really cool backup and data management solution. And if you didn't see that, I'll show you where to find that recording. Very innovative stuff. So I'm going to go through the build here very quickly because this is going to be extremely similar to what you saw before with one exception. Archive solutions work the same way. I have software in place. That software moves data out of production storage into archive class storage. It indexes it all. It makes it searchable, and it makes me a happier person. Typically, you need to protect that and get that offsite as well. That is almost a 100% rule across the board because that's critical data, right? Now, what I can do is these solutions offer cloud connectors as well. So now what I can do is replace that on-premise storage footprint with cloud storage. And that is a difference between backup and archive. So with archive, I feel comfortable telling a customer, you don't need the on-premise anymore. Because if a recall is a little slower, that's okay. It's archive. With backups, they will still need some local footprint, some local storage. Because if you need to restore data, as of malicious or accidental deletion or corruption, whatever the case may be, you want that restore to take place quickly. And usually for those type of destructive events, I mean, this is like a 90% rule, it's within a few days, and you will have that on-premise. That won't be vaulted off to the cloud. If it is, it's going to take a little longer to recover, but I always recommend to customers that they have some local storage available to keep those near-term backups present. Okay, and another nice thing that you can do here through Marketplace Appliances, or in the case of Archive 360 with their cloud-based service, is my archives live in the cloud. I can offload search and discovery to the cloud. And they do something really, really cool where they can allow you to provision access, search and discovery access to an outside party. So if I have an external legal firm, I can give them just the access they need to go out and do their job, search through that data, perform legal discovery, and do all of that without burdening my on-premise footprint. And Commvault and OpenText and the others that you see here, they have cloud presence as well, cloud capabilities for search and discovery. So now all of a sudden, the Azure storage is more than just the repository. It becomes the real platform for archive activities, and that's again driving additional value. It's more than just the filing cabinet. You get true value from having the data there in the cloud. And now our final scenario here, I've got my on-premise infrastructure. I want to make sure I have frequently updated copies of my data. Typically archives, you're running jobs, daily, weekly, whatever the case may be. Backups, you're typically doing backups once a day. So the copies of the data in the cloud are not, super up to date, right? But with hybrid cloud solutions, whether it's storage tiering based offerings, like our own StoreSimple appliance or Nasuni or SoftNAS or the others, you've got much more up-to-date copies of the data in the cloud, and you're able to shrink the footprint of your on-premise storage. And that data is available in readable file format. So I can hand it over to media services. I can allow access through HD Insight. And now all of a sudden, I've got the capability to take pretty up-to-date data from my on-premise infrastructure and run that through value-add services on top of Azure. And there are the folks that support hybrid storage architectures and implementations. And then there's the dev test and burst to cloud and migration scenarios. And this is one that's real near and dear to my heart for anybody who sat in on the Azure Site Recovery conversation in November. I'm really passionate about this because I was doing this, oh my goodness, I'm going to date myself here, 14 years ago when I was a storage administrator, replicating data to an offsite location and cloning it for dev test. These vendors that I'm going to highlight here make this a lot easier than what I had to do back in the day. Not only do they have the means to replicate that data to the cloud, to update the copies in the cloud, but they have really cool, really sophisticated workflow engines that can automate the presentation to virtual machines in Azure or the other value-add services. I want to highlight one here, Velostrada, who is going to be presenting to us later this month as part of the Azure Storage series. The best comparison I can give you to technologies we're all familiar with is they provide a vMotion, storage vMotion for my VMware centric or knowledgeable folks in the crowd, or live migration, storage live migration for my Hyper-V folks, like solution between on-premise virtualized infrastructures and public cloud. So they can very, very quickly, within minutes, transition just the compute portion of an infrastructure to Azure, or the storage, or both. So you can use them for migrating machines. You can use them for bursting and moving the compute workload temporarily. You can use them for moving the storage workload. Really, really cool, really innovative solution. And they're just one of the many vendors here, NetApp and Zerto, our own site recovery, Actifio, that make it really easy to automate presentation of data to resources inside of Azure. Just awesome stuff. There's some really cool things being done there that make hybrid cloud a reality, that bridge on-premise and public and make it all look and feel like one, and introduce capabilities to our customers that are just so powerful, and the kinds of things that were that art of the possible before, and now the art of reality. It's really, really nifty, including our own StoreSimple. And I'm going to pause for questions after this. We just announced the preview of StoreSimple data transformation services. What this does is, rather than requiring a StoreSimple virtual appliance to make data readable in the cloud by Azure virtual machines and services, what we can now do is, with a fully automated platform as a service offering, we can transform and make the data that was sent through StoreSimple cloud snapshots. We can make that available to Azure Media Services, HD Insight, and just really anything that can access data in a storage blob, Power BI, for example. So really, really cool service that we just introduced. I just got into the preview myself. I'm going to be playing around with this. I'll record a demo and post that on the Azure Partners Yammer group, so you can all see this in action if you don't have the ability to get access to a StoreSimple appliance and do this yourself. But really, really cool. We're starting to see some innovative things being done by our StoreSimple team, by vendors like Actifio and Velostrada and NetApp, that all of a sudden really make it simple for customers to use data they've sent to the cloud, and makes it easy to get that data there and get it there efficiently with compression and deduplication technologies, and get it there securely by making sure that encryption is involved in all ends of the path and at rest. So we are able to have conversations with customers now that we all dreamed of having just a few years ago. Boy, things have changed. All right, Willie, I'm going to pause and see if we've got any questions there from the audience.
Sure, Karl. We actually have 3 questions.
All right.
I think this one alludes to the solution slide that you had up earlier. I do not see Acronis in your solution list. Is it still a viable backup solution?
Yeah, absolutely. And, folks, believe me, no slights meant by leaving a logo off of those slides. As you'll see with this one, there's only so much real estate, right? So absolutely, Acronis is a good Microsoft partner. Great solution, fully Azure integrated for backups. So yes, they're absolutely on the list, and we do have a comprehensive list out on the Azure public website on the storage section.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, to use the cloud for storage, it seems like you would need a lot of bandwidth to move the data.
So that is a great question. And the answer there is one that I always hate to give, that we always hate to give anybody, right? Customers or anyone that we interact with on our daily lives. It depends. It depends. So what is their driver for going there? How quickly do they need to get the data there? And just from my past, from my history here at Microsoft, I've had really happy StoreSimple customers, for example, who have had 10 megabits of bandwidth, and I've had really happy customers with StoreSimple who have had 300 megabits of bandwidth. Customers with gigabit plus, right? What it really depends on is how much data do they have to move and how quickly do they need to get it there. So that's a consulting opportunity. That is an opportunity for you to sit down and have speed of light discussions, right? What's possible with what they have today. And, what I cannot give you is a clear yes or no answer to that question, because it's really going to vary based on the situation and the customer and the need. But great opportunity for you to show value and go out and work with that customer and assess what they have and what they would need and act as a consultant. All right. And we have one more there, right, Willie?
Yes, and actually one just came in, so if we do have time, I'm going to ask both of them. But
yeah, absolutely.
I think you just alluded to this in the last slide, but any info on Azure privacy policy with regards to private data on cloud storage?
Oh, heck yeah. We've got a great story there. So in your search engine of choice, please type Azure Trust Center. And we are very public with our privacy statement and how we safeguard customer data and the means and mechanisms that are available to them. One of the great things that we've done is introduced transparent encryption on Azure storage accounts. So the customers can protect their data by enabling that. And then each one of the vendors that I've mentioned here so far, including all of our own Microsoft native solutions, introduce additional encryption on top of that. And the vast majority of those solutions, including ours, are based on private key encryption, which means the customer holds the key and the customer has access to their data. Microsoft does not. So you can learn more on the Trust Center. I would encourage you to read through that. We hide nothing. We are public, transparent, and have a lot to be proud of in that arena.
Okay. And last question before getting back to the presentation. Does Azure Backup Service support using cool blob storage as a target?
Great question. And one time I've got to share some bad news with everybody on the call. So today it does not. All of the third parties that I mentioned and whose logos you saw and you will see again, they do. They support cool blob storage today. Azure Backup does not yet. The engineering team is hard at work on that, and keep your eyes peeled on the blog for some announcements there, but the answer today is no. All right, outstanding. We'll have more opportunity for questions here at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Real quick, this is just meant more for reference after the call than anything else. When I sit down with account executives, it's always hard to decide what's the right solution, right? When do I know to bring in one of these third parties? How do I know when to position Azure Backup? What's the right answer to the customer's needs? So I built a little flow chart here, and this walks through the different ways that Azure Storage can help and the different solutions that can help provide an answer to that problem. So I'm not going to walk through this. These are a lot of names and logos that we saw before. Great reference for after the fact. Apologies for the builds. Really cool when I am talking to this slide. Kind of painful when you're just moving through it quickly. But just a great way to walk somebody through the different options that are available if they're not necessarily storage savvy. And not to beat a dead horse, but what does storage bring to the table? Well, it's an enabler, right? It is really powerful in terms of activating access to Azure services, enabling that customer to get even more value out of the cloud. And here typically is how that's done. Get the data there. Step one. Step two, Get that marketplace appliance up and running so you can access that data. Step 3, use the data with the services present in the cloud, even if it's just on-demand compute through VMs. Spin those VMs up when you need them, run your search or discovery, run your analytics, do your dev test, shut them down. Save some big money there and increase time to market at the same time. And then, of course, sit back, wait for the pats on the back, because you've done amazing things and you can now party like it's 1999. And storage is the catalyst here, right? Storage is the enabler. And you look at everything that it can bring along with it. Networking services like ExpressRoute, optional, not required. Virtual machines, appliances to support the infrastructure like security and networking appliances, and then all the value add Azure services. It all starts with the data. Get the data there, then everything else follows. So that's where all of these folks can help. All of these solutions can help. And here's what it means to you. Here's what it means to our partner community. First of all, you're going to get Microsoft sellers' attentions when you bring them an opportunity that starts with storage, right? Because storage by itself, depending on the tier of storage, depending on the price to that customer based on their EA level or any promotion that they've taken advantage of, like the cool storage promotion that we're now offering, it can take a decent amount of storage to get to a meaningful amount of revenue, right? Especially for the bulk of our sellers. I threw $1,000 out there, $1,000 a month. That can be a lot of storage unless you combine it with other things. So I've got the data there. Now I'm going to spin up some machines for dev test. Well, a handful of VMs can really, really impact the monthly Azure consumption, right? So getting the data there is step 1. It's the foundation, and it drives everything else, and that's going to get the attention of the Microsoft seller community that you work with, right? This is step 1 in the project. This is our foot in the water, and now we're going to move forward off of this, and we're gonna help you get to meaningful revenue. This is what we as a partner can do. Just for reference, based on our earlier call, I did put some numbers down here in the bottom on how long does it take to get X amount of data up to the cloud, and that assumes 80% efficiency on the link. We all know TCP/IP. You don't get 100% efficiency out of a link, so I think those are some real reasonable numbers based on what I've seen in my past 17 years in this side of the business. Oh my goodness, 18 years. Jeez, it's 18 years now. Wow, time has flown. But there's more to it than that. There's not only the Azure side, but there is the technology partner side. So if you found a great way to work with a customer that has Veeam, that's now an opportunity to work with Veeam as well. You could resell that Cloud Connect license. You can work with them and do the services. Now you not only have Azure services revenue, you have revenue potential with that technology partner, with that ISV. There are great options there, and that's the worst case scenario. That's the customer already owns Azure and they already own Veeam. And I'm just using them as an example, right? But they already own that stuff. There's still resell opportunity and there's services opportunity. Oh, and the DPOR that goes along with it. And it just gets better as we go from the bottom here up to the top, where they don't have anything. They don't have Azure and they don't have a solution that allows them to get data up to the cloud. Now you've got just a huge expanded opportunity. So the great thing about these technology partners is they provide innovative solutions and they provide tremendous revenue opportunities for all of you. And one thing we're doing as part of this storage series is we're giving you the contacts inside of each one of those vendors to go to find out more. What are their training classes? What are their certification processes, if they have them? How do you become a partner? They're all sharing that information on this storage series. So if you haven't joined us yet, please do. And if you weren't able to join, we have recorded each one of those sessions. So some great things here for you going forward. Partner Connect, as you all know, is the CRM system going forward. We've got some great opportunities to learn how to use it there if you're unfamiliar. Where that's becoming increasingly important is our team inside of Microsoft can take an opportunity that you create and they can direct it to, they can pass it to the co-sell ready ISVs, which most of the ISVs in this series are. What that means is there's now an entry in both CRM systems. So you now have the opportunity to work together, to collaborate, to coordinate on that opportunity, and to make sure that throughout the selling process and proving and closing and all of that, you're in lockstep, not only with Microsoft, but our technology partner. And you can learn more about that there on those links, and then make sure and work with your Microsoft seller peers and have them pass that through. And hopefully we'll introduce that capability in Partner Connect soon, so you will all be able to do that yourselves and not have to rely on our sellers. But today that's not possible. I mentioned this month-long storage series. You want to know more about that and perhaps view the sessions that you may have missed, head to Cloud Infra Partner site. That is the Yammer group within the Azure Partner community, within the Microsoft US Partner community, where we will post updates. And I've been pretty active there, and I've been posting those sessions with the technology partners pretty much right after they occur. So head out there and view the schedule for upcoming sessions, view the recordings for past sessions, and the presentations. All of our partners have been kind enough to provide their presentations, so they're available in the file section as well. Some great information for you. And if the Microsoft seller that you work with gives you any flack about engaging, Veeam or NetApp or any of these partners who are co-sell ready, this is how easy it is for them. They see the opportunity you've created, and they go up to the top of their MSX window, they click Send to Partner, and then they're walked through 3 steps that are really easy. Yeah, we want to work with NetApp on this. Click from the drop-down, Submit, and done. So don't let them give you any garbage about this being hard and adding, time to their day. It is ridiculously easy, and it just makes sure that you and the technology partner and your Microsoft seller are in lockstep and can really get these things done and get your customers activated and enabled on these cool, powerful solutions that all land in Azure Storage and all enable value-add services on top of it. Whew! All right, we've got time for questions. And I need to take a breath and get a drink of water, so perfect timing. Willie, how are we looking on questions?
Oh, great discussion, Karl. Great presentation as well. We do have a few questions, 4 to be exact. The first question, does Azure Backup Service support using, oh, I'm sorry, I asked that one previously. The next one is, where does Azure Backup Server versus StoreSimple differ?
Okay, great question. So, StoreSimple is a self-protecting storage appliance. That's the best way I can explain it. So, StoreSimple is meant to house data for production applications, and typically the use cases that we're seeing are unstructured data, file shares, content repositories. We do have a few customers that are using it as a virtual machine storage, but really where it shines is large content, lower performance needs, and anything that's written to it. So let's say I move my enterprise file shares to StoreSimple. It automatically protects. It has snapshot capabilities. So you set a schedule. It takes a picture of the data as it looked at the time, and it sends those pictures up to Azure. So I've got a capability to roll back hours, days, months, years, and recover the data that is written to StoreSimple. All right, so it backs up what's stored on it, whereas Azure Backup protects machines no matter where they live. Right? That's a good way to differentiate between the two. I have VMware virtual machines, I have Hyper-V virtual machines, I have SQL databases, SharePoint, Exchange, that all live somewhere. Now, I don't really care where when I have Azure Backup Server in the picture. Azure Backup Server will create application consistent, virtual machine consistent backups. It will land them on a local storage pool in the customer's data center, and then it can vault on a schedule. It can send backups offsite and keep them in Azure long term. So that's the best way to think of it. Azure Backup Server doesn't matter where it lives. StoreSimple can only protect what's written to it. I hope that helps.
Yes, thanks, Karl. The next question is, can you suggest the best way for us to determine storage transactions for regular storage and for hot/cool storage? Are there any guidelines or tools that can help determine these values?
This comes up a lot, and folks hate my answer on this. No. and reason being, it's really going to depend, right? There is no rule of thumb for backup. There is no rule of thumb for archive. There is no rule of thumb for hybrid. You can think of a storage transaction as being a read or write, what a traditional storage vendor would call an IOP. And there's only one way to measure that. It's to run tooling, and there's a lot of tooling that can do this, to capture the reads and writes on what that customer is considering sending to Azure. That being said, you'll hear a lot of us talk about, don't focus on that too much, and here's why. When I would work with customers on StoreSimple use cases, Azure Backup, Azure Site Recovery, and they would be very concerned about that, I'd do some modeling for them. And I would model billions of transactions, effectively billions of reads and writes. That's a lot, right? They look at their environment, they look at their storage array. Billions of reads and writes occurs over a really long period of time. And billions of reads and writes with Azure storage, any kind, equates to pennies or dollars a month. So for those who are really concerned about it, those customers who are petrified over that transactions value, do the modeling. Run through, put absurd numbers in there. Here's what 5 billion transactions would look like. It's a drop in the bucket. The kind of thing that, quite honestly, is a rounding error. And personally, I hope, we eventually just eliminate from the costs, totally. But we'll see. I'm lobbying for that. Nothing is changing to date as far as I've been told. But it's kind of a rounding error. Okay, Willie, any more questions?
Sure, just one more. What is the cost? And I saw that you actually have some TCO slides in the appendix, and those are available in the Yammer group.
Yes. So all the foundation of that one TCO slide I put up is in the appendix, and it is really sound rationale and great math for anybody who wants to see that.
Okay. And the question that was asked is, what is the cost per gig for cloud storage?
That's another, it depends. Great news is that it's public information. So if you head out to azure.microsoft.com, what you will see is a pricing tab. And you can go there, and based on the tier of storage, so the performance tier of storage and the protection level of storage, the cost varies. But that is public information, and you'll be able to see that.
And I guess would that apply to this question as well? Cool storage has a lot of little costs that go along with it. Where can we get detailed definition of each of those costs?
Yeah, so it does. On the pricing page, we link to an explanation of the terms. So I talked briefly about transactions. Another term that's unfamiliar to many folks who haven't spent a lot of time with public cloud infrastructures is egress. So what exactly is an egress fee? All of that is outlined and explained, and the great news there is there's nothing hidden, right? We don't hide any of the costs, and I think we pretty clearly explain what what they are, what each one is. If not, I think at the top of the blog here, yes. Well, no, that's my Twitter and my LinkedIn, but previously on the slides, I had my email address, KARAUTEN at Microsoft.com. Please reach out. I mean, I'll be happy to get you, a better definition or a plain English. I'm happy to do that. Just kind of translate, right, from storage engineering to the rest of us.
Okay. Thanks, Karl. And I know we reached the top of the hour, but we have one last question, if that's okay.
Sure, no problem.
Okay. I have a curious question here as well. Do you see a virtual StoreSimple array being adopted more now as there isn't a need to have the investment of 60 to 90K per appliance?
Oh man, that's an awesome question. So I'll tell you, we've seen tremendous uptake in the virtual array. And for those who are unfamiliar, StoreSimple has been a Microsoft solution for about 5 years now. And for much of its history, it's been a physical appliance. To get the physical appliance, the customer had to do an EA. They had to do an upfront commit, pretty substantial amount of money upfront. And then the appliance was provided for free, right? All of that upfront money could be used with any Azure service, and you get a StoreSimple appliance along with it. That continues to be the case today with the physical appliance, but we now have a virtual array that can be deployed on VMware vSphere infrastructure or on Hyper-V. It's a template you download from the website and deploy it. Has the exact same functionality. It is limited in terms of capacity. It doesn't support as much storage capacity, but it has the same functionality, and actually even more, because it can act as a file server, not just an iSCSI array, but also a file server. And that one has a much lower entry price. So we do still require an EA, but it can be the minimum EA commit. Which I think is what is that, $1,200 a month? And I think that's what that is. And you get the right to use as many virtual arrays in as many locations as you would like. So that has really taken off. That being said, we came off of our best Q1 ever for StoreSimple for the physical arrays. I haven't seen the numbers for Q2 yet, but the physical appliance continues to perform really well for us. But the virtual array is starting to explode in terms of number of deployments. So yeah, I think we'll see that becoming an increasingly popular option. It's a great thing for remote offices, for example. You can eliminate remote office storage and remote office backup in one fell swoop. So I think we're going to see increasing popularity of the virtual array.
Awesome, Karl. Thank you again. That was a great presentation and great discussion. Also want to thank all the partners who were able to take time out of their day and join. Also want to highlight the webinar series that is going on during the month of January. All the schedule of that is again posted in the blog as well as on the Yammer community group. So again, thank you everyone. I'm going to end the stream now.
Thanks everybody.